I just tried to like not yawn, but honestly, I'm tired as fuck. But let's go ahead and get into it. Hey y'all, it's your boy Nians, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new, welcome. This is a safe space. Over here, we're just here to just do what we do and be in peace and spread light and so and so. So if you're new, welcome. If you're returning, hey, how you doing? Nice to see you guys again. I know. Yeah. But today I wanted to go ahead and do something, honestly. So let's go ahead and get into it for real. So I guess you can call this a part of my new series or whatever. It's called What's in the Book. But honestly, yeah. So honestly, first let's go ahead and get into it. So many of you deal with people who are trying to figure out what exactly it is you do and how you do the things that you do. Well, honestly, let me go ahead and tell you. I can go ahead and tell you that process. So the title of this video is going to be called, If You Want More from Life, You Have to Become Untethered. I'm probably just going to title, If You Want More, You Have to Become ... What's in the book, or vice versa. So if you want more from life, you have to become untethered. And generally those people who are untethered are typically entrepreneurs of that nature, just because I feel like that's a huge umbrella category, and I feel like a lot of things fall underneath that specific term, right? So some of you, if you don't know the definition of tethered, it means to fasten or confine with or as if with a rope, chain, or the like to limit the range of movement. So when you're tethered to something, that typically means that you have this umbilical cord per se to something that you have a strong connection with, or something that's fathomable, or something that you just have a strong latch onto, right? So with that, what you would want it, hold on 1 second, let me, because I'm not editing this properly. So honestly, it probably, yeah, this is fine, I edited it. So when it comes to being tethered, typically you can be tethered. I can use myself as an example throughout this. Typically when it comes to being tethered, you are sometimes blinded. You put up the veil per se around yourself, and you don't focus on, you're focusing on not necessarily the wrong things, but things that are not aligning with your purpose per se. Just because you're tethered to something, it doesn't mean that it's wrong. It doesn't mean that it isn't, whatever I'm trying to say. It's just more so that you're holding on to something that keeps you from going to the next level. And when you are tethered, you hold yourself back. And there are a few works that expatiate on tetheredness, but the one that I'm using as reference today is Jordan Peele's Us, if you guys have seen that movie. So a quick synopsis of that is, in summation, the protagonist returns to her hometown, and she has to battle the antagonist, which is a magnified subconscious version of herself. I mean, if you want more than that little quick synopsis, feel free to watch the film. Great film, loved it. Shook me, but loved it. It shook me in a different way, but one of my songs that I have that is not out yet, I talk about the dualities in between being a devil and an angel, and we all are. We're both the devil and angel in our lives, right? So we're all built off of balance, right? So every good seed is a bad seed. You also have to meet your shadow eventually if you want to become untethered. So meeting your shadow is kind of like an introduction to your subconscious per se, because in your subconscious you're not thinking about it. That's why subconscious is below your consciousness state. So what you have to do is you really have to dive deep within yourself, and this typically is brought upon by tower moments in life, which are moments that lead you to a spiritual enlightenment or a spiritual awakening, right? So hold on, I'm trying to stick to it. So I'm writing this down just because I know my thoughts anyways, we're going to stay with it. So I can be a devil or I can be an angel. Please don't trap me or I have to shatter my halo. So with that specific lyric from that song that I have, it's talking about I can be a devil or I can be an angel. And it all goes down to free will, and we all have the free will we're all gifted the choice of free will. And when you want to talk about like the cards that you're dealt in life, you all are gifted cards, right? For example, phase 10, you're all dealt some cards, right? You can either phase through that level or keep going in that cycle of insanity or keep going in that repeated cycle, right? So when you're going in that repeated cycle, you can be aware, depending on who you are, where you're at, and you're a mentee, you can be aware that you're going into that cycle, but you're just choosing to stay in it. And a lot of individuals are subconsciously staying within that state just because they're scared to go into the unknown. They're scared to take that leap of faith and jump right into it, right? So using me as an example, in the last video I told you guys how sometimes I stayed in situations just because I didn't want to be alone, right? So it's not that it's not that I'm scared to be alone. That's not the thing. It's just more so of how we all have our human experiences where we go through shit that just makes us feel like we need somebody, or it just makes us not want to be alone. Or for me, what I was trying to say was, I tend to rather want to solve other people's problems sometimes than to deal with my own, just because sometimes it is taxing. Sometimes it is treacherous to have to always consistently battle, whatever it is that you're going through in life. And I feel like sometimes you have to do certain things sometimes certain things have to happen so it doesn't stunt your growth, right? So the art of becoming untethered is literally simple. It goes into what I call simplified thinking. Everything is the same shit in life, right? Just in a different form. So pertaining to my last video, that's why I said we all are the same beings, but just in different forms, if that makes sense. If you get me, you get me. If you don't, then you don't. I can't explain it like that. So let me just jump right into it. If you want to speak in regards to modern religion such as Christianity, they depict afterlife and heaven and hell, right? So heaven and hell, what if you found out that heaven and hell is actually internal and you choose which state you want to be in? Heaven can be a state, hell can be a state. It sucks in a way. However, sometimes it does have to happen. Sometimes you have to coexist in both dimensions. Sometimes you have to coexist within one certain spectrum. And it all just depends on what do you think life is, what do you think the art of life is, what do you think afterlife is, right? So depending on how you take context to that, and depending on how you process certain things, that depends on you as a whole. And sometimes that can depend on how you were raised. Sometimes that can just depend on what's instilled into you and what you've learned just from going through the phases of life. Life can be something that is just, it's almost like, to be honest, life is like a game. It is. You can glitch out the system and make some things happen for yourself. And typically those people who glitch the system are entrepreneurs. Okay, see, now it's going. Okay, so yeah, let me go ahead. So typically people who glitch the system are entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs can be a wide range of things. An entrepreneur to me is somebody who is willing to go against the, not necessarily, not go against the grain, but somebody who's willing to see something, right? They see what everybody else is doing, right? But instead of doing what everybody else is doing, they're looking about the people who are doing what they're doing to everybody else, right? So instead of being that person that falls underneath that category, they choose to go do it from themselves. I can't, excuse me if I'm speaking confusingly. So an entrepreneur is a person that, I don't want to use textbook definition for this one. An entrepreneur to me is somebody who isn't scared, honestly. Somebody who isn't afraid to do what they want to do, because you understand, in order to be an entrepreneur, you have to understand that you yourself are your world. And for so long, for me, I was living in my own world that I didn't really know what existed outside. So when I say going back to look at things from all aspects, I wasn't doing that completely because I wasn't looking at how people viewed me in a sense. And honestly, it's just because you have to be able to create your own safe space. Your safe space is your world. When you cultivate and create that world, right? That is your place. So you can control what happens in it. You can control who is in that world. You can control how things work in that world. You can control the outcome. It all comes to a form of manipulation. Manipulation is done by everybody. Whether you want to believe it or not, we're manipulating the energies, and people who manipulate energies are artists. A lot of artists know how to manipulate energy, which is why they are typically in the positions that they're in. If you, for example, if you are a reader or you're intuitive, you do intuitive healing, light work healing, and typically you know how to manipulate that energy. You know how to read the energy. Everybody has the power to do this shit. Everybody has the power to do this shit. It is just depending on yourself. If you choose to wake up, if you choose to take advantage of it. And one thing about it that you can't do when you are trying to create your safe space or you're trying to create your own world, you have to literally be willing to do what no one else is doing. You have to be willing to go after the things that nobody else is going after. And that's where it comes to me having appreciation for artists. People who are artists are creators. Artist is equivalent to entrepreneur, honestly. Being entrepreneurial talents and whatnot, that's an art. That's an art. Life is an art. You are gifted with a blank canvas. You paint it how you want to paint it. Right? So you can either choose to paint a picture that you love, or you can just choose to paint a picture that's right? So you have to make sure that when you are doing these things, you're doing it filled with the energy that you want to have filled for it. And when I'm talking about the energy that you want to have filled for it, I mean, you want to fill your safe space with what you want in your safe space, right? So if you want your safe space to be of prosperity, abundance, happiness, love, you fill that safe space with that energy. If you want your safe space to be filled with toxicity, negativity, sadness, you fill it with that. And you can subconsciously, I don't know what reading it was, but I was talking about how the law of attraction, right? And I'm talking about how you can attract the good things or the bad things. So that's why you have to delve into your subconscious level. And when you delve into your subconscious level, you're pulling up those weeds, right, from your garden. And you're not letting them surround the seeds that you've planted. Because if you let those weeds surround the seeds that you planted, what's going to happen? right? Hmm. So in the film Us, the protagonist returns to her hometown, and I don't remember it verbatim, but she kind of just basically has to, they all are mirrored versions of themselves, right? But the mirrored version of themselves that they're looking at, to me, is their subconscious. They're looking at their dark side, so to speak. But one thing that you have to do is go into your shadow side is a lovely being, right? When you look at life, when you look at life to the point where you're not looking at it from a judgmental point of view and you're thoroughly looking at it for real, you would see that I don't want to do this, but I'm gonna do it. Okay, so from one religion that I know is Christianity, right? So in Christianity, you typically, you have who's the biggest antagonist of Christianity? You have the devil, Satan, Lucifer, right? Lucifer is a fallen angel, right? Which means that he was once an angel. So you can choose to be an angel or a devil, right? Because he wanted to be better than everybody else, right? So that's why he became a fallen angel. And honestly, if I can just break away real quick and go into full ninja mode, in life, right? When you're dealt those cards, and I'm just talking. Now, if you don't want to hear this, 1717, go ahead. So if you just skip forward, right? So I'm gonna use myself as a thorough example. In my life, I would say that the only way that you can get to the point of being untethered is you have to understand both sides of life, right? So I've seen the very good sides of life, right? But I've also seen the very dark sides of life. And I understand how others work. And quick little thing, if you ever want to get one up on somebody, you have to truly know how they function and you have to truly know how they work, right? So and I'm not talking about no little petty shit, I'm talking about you have to go into their mind process. You have to go into the functions of them. And that's why it's just like, I'm trying to make sure I stay on track, but it's floating around. Yeah. So when it comes to talking about, let's just use modern day right now. We have our rules and regulations that we have to, abide by, right? So however, those rules are set up to keep everything intact, right? And just how religion, in all honesty, religion was put in place because some people needed something to hold on to, per se, or that's what they wanted to state. When people are free, they generally are able to generate and cultivate so many beautiful creations, right? And I see that within myself. But I do notice that you have to play your cards right. And for me, I got by myself, I got on my own, and I saw how life was, but I always use the people that I've come across as examples. This could be friends, this could be managers, this could be professors, this could be children, this could be so many things. And you see how people play the game, and you always need to try to figure out, well, what's the mistakes that they made? How can I go from that, right? So that's why I typically let you guys see me raw, because I don't want you to go through what I went through. I don't want you to have to endure the things that I've endured. If I can avoid that, help you avoid that, then I'm going to try and help you and avoid that. Now, some people, they just don't want to learn. They don't want to listen. I have tried to break it down so many times, but it comes to a point where sometimes you do just have to worry about yourself. Just the truth is, not being selfish, just protecting your peace and your sanity. And going back to the hometown, it's so significant because in a way, this happened to me where you can say I had to go back to my hometown. And when I had to go back, I kind of had to, it's like going back home, even if it's not home, going back home is kind of like you're facing what happened head on. Just like that's like that final round where you're in the game and you're trying to figure out, okay, so if we go back, we know this happened this way. Okay, but now that I'm back in this position, I got a little bit more oomph to me. So how can I make sure that I keep everything on track? So what I did was I let go of any of my stressors. I let go of anything that was literally holding me back. And sometimes, again, everything that's you tethered to isn't bad. For example, for me, my camera that I had, baby, I love that shit, even though it still kind of pissed me off sometimes, but I loved it because I worked for it. I literally had the shit that I have had in life, I worked my ass off for. I'm talking about some heavy work for. I've worked in all aspects that you can think of, to be honest with you. And I think it's why I am the way that I am, is because I understand people. I understand the way that people think. I understand the way that people maneuver and the way that they work, which is why I am the way that I am, because I know what it's like to be in some predicaments that some people wouldn't even think about. I know how to, when I say been through it all, been here before, these days are no longer warm. Like, I'm sorry. I'm just gonna. Okay, so when you are going back home, right? When you go back home, you're sent there because you're supposed to figure out, it's almost like it's a final test. Are you going to fall back into the same routines, right? And sometimes you're going to have the outcome that you want, but you're going to be in this waiting process, right? So when you are in this waiting process, you literally, it's like you tested. You are heavily tested. It's like you know what's about to happen, but at the same time, it's like you kind of can't do shit about it, but wait, but be still. So when you're in that process of going home, wherever home is, think about it. Home is just not just a surface level definition. It's not just a surface level term. It all depends about what is home for you. So when you go back home, you are sent there because they just want you to see, or you're being tested to see if you're going to fall back, or if you're going to relapse, or if you're going to move forward. And one thing about it is that's why, because that story keeps coming about, don't look back. I have heard that shit in more ways than one these past few weeks. And I'm talking about in shows, I've heard it in music, I've heard it in videos, and I'm just like, what the? Okay, so of course I pieced it together. Then you hear commercials and shit. So when it says don't look back, you turn into a grain of salt, you'll lose your memories in the Bible. Okay, pillar of song. Okay, so yeah, when you don't look back, and also you also have to know, in order to be untethered and move to this next point, you have to know what you aren't looking back on, right? Like what is it that you don't need to look back on? And I'm gonna be honest. Can I say this? So for me, again, using me as an example, my biggest thing is, it's not that I'm addicted to money. It's just that I always like having some type of stability. However, you're not meant to be stable in life. And a few years ago, so a few years ago when I was a few years ago, I almost started singing. A few years ago when I was working at this one job, right? And I was like one of the best workers there, legit. Like, I'm not even trying to be that way, but I know who I am, and I know my work ethic. And I was working at this one job, and it's like they used me for what they could use me for. Then they let me go. And I had just switched to part-time and was going back in school, right? When you're always trying to better yourself, that's how you know. When you're always trying to better yourself and you see things start dropping around from you, it's because they weren't meant to go with you. They weren't meant to go on this process with you. And to be honest, for me, do you know how many interviews I went on last year? I went on hella interviews last year, and I'm talking about some of these were, but it always was something, whether I was facing racism, whether I was facing ageism, whether I was facing. I've also had the opportunity to interview with somebody through a phone interview and see how they interviewed somebody else that wasn't me, who was a peer. And I heard the differences in how they spoke to me, and that was kind of like one of the key indicators that let me know no. So when I got to this point, even as far as like right now, jobs, I don't know why, but it's just like, I think it's because I'm a natural, like, it's like, I like having a bag, even if it's a quick bag, but it also, hey, honestly, I'm learning as well. At the same time, I'm trying to tell y'all. So, I mean, I had this thought in my head too, but it's one that I really want to get to. Another thing about being untethered is, if you want to get to the bag, you have to be untethered, right? So when you're trying to get to the bag, what is your bag? A bag isn't necessarily just, to me, isn't just necessarily a monetary value. It encompasses just the whole of my being, a whole of being free. And for the longest, that's all I ever wanted, because again, I told you in the last video, well, even just in general, you need to be free in order to, when you're free, you're not tethered, right? And so, thank you. And so the one thing with me was, my biggest addiction in life is, as crazy as it is working, right? So that's why I told y'all in the video before last that I got my ass sat down, was because I had to, perfect time for a good surprise. You literally are going to be in the point where you're going through your awakening, your transition, whatever. You're going to be into a point where all of your innermost worries are going to come out. There's nothing you can do about it. It's nothing you can do about it. You're just gonna it's just what you do about it. There's nothing you can do about it. It's just what you do about it. You're dealt the cards, how you play them. And for me, yes, I am stubborn. Sometimes I do have my ways. However, one thing about it is, I always want my happiness and I always want my sanity. So whatever it takes to get to that point, I will do it. That's just the type of nigga. I am a fuck it nigga. Like, I literally would just be like, okay, fuck it. All right, it is what it is. All right, if it's gonna get, okay, cool. Let's get into it. And it's crazy because I had this relationship with somebody, right? And the last thing, and it's like, I really tried to save them, right? I really tried. Even when they were being so fucking evil, I really tried to save them, right? And it's like they were it's like the process of, you have to go home in order to leave home. So when you're leaving home, it's hard, right? It's not easy. And it takes a lot, but it also lets you know how strong you are. It also lets you know just how powerful you are. Because you have the ability to walk away from everything that you knew. Which is, I go back to say, what is afterlife? What does afterlife mean to you? Right? So when you're going after life, you're going after life. You have to fight for your life, right? And then it's also, you do die in a sense. You do. And I just remember, I'm a shit, and it's like, I'm not trying to, it's just, I'm it's the energy that's coming on right now, right? So for me, I shared it on TikTok real quick, but I've always been, I would like to think, well put together. I've always had my little, quirks about me, but still, I've always been a well put together person. And before last year, the ending of last year, right? I was so emotionally wrecked. I was physically wrecked. I was just mentally wrecked. I was tired. I didn't know what the fuck to do. You don't want to talk about surrender? I literally just remember, I remember crying my heart out. And I'm talking about to the point where I just remember fully just crying. And it's like, I dealt with the shit, but it's like, when you're going home, you're dealing with home. So what is home? Whatever is home to you, you have to face. And I just felt like I was so, again, for me, it's like, I knew I had consistently started knocking things off one by one throughout the year, right? But I got into that home run, and it just was draining. I've always seen shit since I was a kid. My family, they never tried to make me feel like I was crazy. They understood. And it's more to that, but I ain't gonna go into it. But it's just that I'm gonna put it like this. I get signs, you get signs to move, right? You get signs and you get certain clues that you have to, don't make it easy. But I guess that's the process, because you really sometimes, for example, this morning, I've had this one clue that I have been working on for damn near about 2 months now. And I just found the other piece to it last night that started making everything make sense. I was like, oh, okay. That's because it's like, you have to look at dates. You have to remember, it's a lot. But just do it. Do it. I promise to you. Do it. Do it. Don't be scared. Do it. Do it. Do it. I promise to you. It'll be well worth it. Do it. But it's almost like they want to know how strong you are and how willing you are to trust. And for me, That's one of my, that was, it's sad in a way, because it's just like, I just didn't ever really trust anything to a certain extent. But it's like I always knew the divine was there, and I always do low-key talk to him. And again, that's why I say the older I get, the more things that I've done make sense, or the more things that happen to me. When I say happen to, I'm not talking about like bad shit completely. I'm talking about everything, just in general. The more things that happen to me start to make more sense, because it's like the more you get into it, the more you start learning. Like, oh, wait, so that, oh, okay. And let me just tell you something. I see things in people that even those people don't see, right? Some people have shadows on them. And what I'm saying is shadows, yes, you have your shadow, but some people really have full-blown shadows on them that move. And it takes over and possesses them. And they start doing things that you know is not them. But it just goes to a point where just because you're not home, that's not your home. That's why I say home. It's not your home. So what you have to do, they want to test you to see just how far are you willing to go. And I tried. And that's the one thing that's one thing that I had to forgive myself on, because you're going to have to do some shit. And I just know, again, I know what it's like to be in these predicaments. I have a very good understanding of life and people from all platforms, you know? And I am who I am because I am who I am. And after I try to help, it's just like, if I try to help you and you don't, not that you have to listen, but I'm not trying to guide you in the wrong direction, my nigga. Like, I'm not. And when I say my nigga, I'm talking generally. Stop taking what I say, certain things that I say, my lingo so literal. Like, it's not that. It's just, woo, come on now. You gotta stay with me. Come on. Don't fall off yet. Don't do that. Don't do that. But it's just like, when you try to help somebody, right? Some people don't want to be helped. Some people, you can be fine. Honestly, again, you have free will. You could be fine. Like, for me, in my case, as far as like these jobs and whatnot, I could be fine. I could have a decent life doing that. However, do I want a decent life, or do I want an exquisite life? Do I want to be free? You can be tethered and still have an all right life, honestly. See? But it's just about your free will and what you're willing to do. Do you want more? If you want more, and you always want more, it's going to keep coming to you, and you're going to keep growing. When you I'm going to just share this. One of my things is, one of my affirmations, I don't use it no more. It's like I use it on a special occasion when I'm really needed. But it's like, I'm gonna just do it like this. I say it 3 times each. So it's like, I'm healed, I am free, my soul is soaring to its highest destiny. I am no longer bounded by the weights of the world or myself. I am healed, I am free, my soul is soaring to its highest destiny. I am no longer bounded by the weights of the world or by myself. And I didn't include that by myself until probably like a month or 2 ago. And probably 2 or 3. And when I included that in, I started noticing that things change when you speak And I'm not just speaking physically. I'm talking about when you speak. When you speak. When you speak, it's powerful. And you're allowing yourself to manifest. And you'll know you're speaking when you aren't speaking. If that makes sense. So, to anybody who comes across this video, to anybody who's watching this, I want you to know that you have to. Ain't no friends in the game, right? What did Nikki say? Ain't no friends in the game. You ain't learned that yet, right? It's no friends. You're not here for that. You come into this world by yourself, right? You come into this world on your purpose. Your purpose. Yeah, people can come into your life for seasons, right? But those people, you're mutually using each other. Mutualism, commensalism, parasitism. You go through all that shit. It's not just for, biologically speaking, it's for everybody. Commensalism, it's for everybody, every being. And when you learn in school and shit, I know people say that you can't learn what you're not really learning what they're teaching you in school, but the truth is you are. You're learning what you want to learn. And then it's all about the cards that are dealt to you. How do you take the knowledge that is given to you and apply that to your life? How do you take the knowledge that's bestowed upon you and use it? How do you take your divine gifts and use them? Everybody has a gift, whether they know it or not. Everybody has a gift, whether they know it or not. It's just that, do you want to take advantage of that? Do you want to get more from life? Even with me, for example, I'll go ahead and admit to this. I'll go ahead and tell them. Okay, so never mind. But you have the power to do whatever you want to do in life. It's just that, are you willing to do it? When I say you create your own rules, it's your game. You can win the game. Once you win the game, you're done. Yes, once you win the game, you are done. And you have to get what I'm saying by when I say you're done. When you win the game, you already know all the levels, all the tactics, all the militia, you get it. You truly understand it. But again, healing people are healing. They still have PTSD from that shit. Right? When you think about, let's talk about the military, right? I have a lot of people in my family that I know in the military, right? People go to war and they come back, but they always come back changed. You don't never go and come back the same. The game, is the game a war? What is it to you? What is the game to you? Game is just a term, right? But what is it to you? And it's just like, when you're untethered, you've beat the levels, you go on about your life. And honestly, that's why I don't really get bothered by people, because you can look at somebody and know, right? The people who are in the same position, And when I say the same position, I'm not just talking about from a physical aspect. I'm talking about this aspect, right? When people are in the same position, find new people. Because they're stuck. They're stuck because they want to be stuck. They're stuck because they want to be stuck. Right? Again, artists are artists because they know how to manipulate energy, right? And manipulating energy is something everybody does. Manipulation. It's just all about some people. If we're being honest, you have people who are enlightened. No, I'm not gonna say that. So you have people who are spiritual, right? Because if you were enlightened, you wouldn't be that way. So you have people who are spiritual, right? Just because somebody is spiritual doesn't necessarily mean that they're coming with good intentions, right? So you have to be very mindful of the energy that you keep. People, okay, now I'm gonna go ahead and talk about this. When it comes to tarot, I hate when it comes to cards and shit. You can tell who is who by this, right? A lot of people have this taboo look on tarot and about how you're pulling evil energies. You pull the energy that you're pulling because of who you are. If you are connected with evil, you pull that evil energy. And what I'm saying this is you can be who you are and still deliver the messages that come across from the divine, right? All messages aren't going to be good, right? And I'm explaining this because I want you to know that just because somebody elicits a message that might be intense doesn't mean that they're evil. And I'm not even talking about myself. I'm just talking in general, right? So when you're doing that, it's all just about how do you understand? Do you understand? Do you understand? And in order to understand, you have to understand yourself. You can only be understood if you understand yourself. And it's just like so many times we as people let fear stricken us and let fear just get into our heads and just surround us and just cover us, right? But you can either stay like this or you can release yourself. Right? You have the ability to sever and cut any tethered rope, anything linking, any bond. You have the ability. And that's what my goal, it's not even, you see how I come here, you see how I do, right? And you see how sometimes it just, what you call it, I write blankly sometimes. Even though I write blankly, if that makes sense. Because a message always just what you call it. It just takes over how it takes over. But I really did put a lot of thought and effort to because it all started in a dream. So literally. But, it's just like for every good seed is a bad seed. Let's talk about balance real quick. So with free will, of course, you have to have, because you have heaven and hell. When you think about it, you're on a scale, and you have heaven, you have hell, right? Do you want to be this way? Do you want to be that way? We all have our slip up moments, and we're human. It's meant to happen, and it's just more so of, you can't take things so serious. And I get so pissed off with myself sometimes, because it's like I know things, but it's like I'm learning with everybody else, right? So yes, I know certain things, but at the same time, for me, I've always known how to apply this shit to other people's lives. But this last year, I had to learn how to start applying shit to my life. And that's something that I'm still doing. And it's just like, when you do that, you get the outcome. You get a beautiful outcome. And I'm just leave it at that. Well, but going back to what I was talking about, PTSD is, when you have people, generally, when you think about it, a lot of enlightened people are a lot of people that generally go through the most shit. Like, you think about it, and it's cruel yet it's beautiful in a sense. It's all just about how you think of a figurative language. It's just all how you choose to visualize and read it. But honestly, okay. Okay, so honestly, I think I hope I targeted what I wanted to target. I feel like I really did. I feel like it all makes sense if you get it for real. If not, just rewatch it. And what I'll do, honestly, I'm just do it. So for the end, what I would like to say is, okay, let me just run through it completely. So the topic of today was, let's do a quick little recap, right? So the topic of today was what? If you want more from life, you have to become untethered, right? And who is generally untethered? It's generally entrepreneurs, right? What is the definition of tethered? Textbook definition. Fastened or confined with or as if with a rope, chain, or the like to limit the range of movements. Okay, and what did we use as a reference? We used Jordan Peele's Us, and we talked about the quick synopsis and summation. The protagonist returns to her hometown and has to battle the antagonist, which is a magnified subconscious version of herself or themselves, however you choose to place it. And if, again, watch the movie, shit. Key points: we're both the devil and angel in our lives, built off of balance. For every good seed is a bad seed. You also have to meet your shadow. And we talked about modern religion, specifically Christianity, where how they depict the afterlife, such as heaven and hell, and what exactly that is. And can heaven and hell be internal, or can along with being external, or however you want to do that. Questions that I want you to ask yourself, or questions that I want you to think and marinate on, is, what does afterlife mean to you? And what if I told you that heaven and hell exist within your being, right? Fun fact: artists are artists because they know how to manipulate energy. For example, performers, tarot, we have singers, actors. Now, specifically, I want to focus on actors, and I would say theater specifically, because if you don't know, my major is interdisciplinary arts and performance, right, and a film minor. But what I chose to focus on at some of these schools was theater. And in theater, some of our warm-up exercises are meditation. And we learn how to control energy, control our energy, because we have to be blank in order to convey a character, right? So that's what I'm telling y'all. Everything, you see how everything in my life kind of, if I'm being honest, I'm just going to say, like, you see how everything in my life kind of intertwines with each other? Yeah. And then even with talking about business and whatnot, I can, it all scopes into like one scope. And the ending message was, and I'm going to leave y'all alone after this, In all honesty, life and the way of life isn't so taboo. Once you master the art of simplified thinking, you're a powerful ass motherfucker. And simplified thinking is something that I had like a lightning strike in my head on. Honestly, quick question: what does lightning strike mean as in a dream form? Because the other night I saw lightning, like pure lightning, strike in the distance, but I know it wasn't on me because I won't shook. I was just like, "Who is that?" But I didn't, and what you call it. But anyways, yeah. So simplified thinking is just a form to the ability to simplify the shit. You know, when you think about the Pythagorean theorem, the variables that you have in mathematics, you figure out, you simplifying that problem. And you want to know what's crazy? I told y'all this little story about me and math. But one thing that I always used to do is kept taking the problem further and further and further and further and further to the point where I would pass whatever was going on and pass the answer. And that's good to an extent, but you also have to have balance. And, you know, balance is balance. Everything has to have a balance. So for every good person is a bad person. But the main thing that I just wanted to stick on was you have the free will to do whatever the fuck you want to do. So when you take your cards, apply them how you need to apply to your life and let that go from there. Je veux que vous trouviez tous la personne vous-même. Right? Bye, y'all. Keep on serving, surviving, and thriving. I hope this helped. I hope you guys like this. You know, we're gonna work on this. I tried my best. It's like I do certain things. I try not to get too attached to what's written, because, you know, but yeah, all right, y'all. What I will do is share an affirmation with you guys. I'll end that on that note. And this time I'm gonna dig into one of mine, the new ones. Okay. One of the first affirmations that I have, and I'll put this in the description box, is I promise to nurture myself and the ideas and creations that I cultivate. I promise to nurture myself and the ideas and creations that I cultivate. I promise to nurture myself and the ideas and creations that I cultivate. And that was that. All right, y'all. You know the drill. Keep on serving, surviving, and thriving. You know, do what you do, and live your best life. Make sure you make conscious decisions. Use that wonderful divine ass discernment, man. And you guys have a lovely, whenever you see this, whether that's evening, night, day, you know. Love you guys. Nalingi Bino Banzo. Bye.